Get ready for the nursing home, old man. Your daughter just spent your money on someone else. Those words stared back at me in glitter ink inside a flimsy birthday card she pressed into my hand. At the exact same second, she tossed shiny keys into her boyfriend's palm. A brand new red Mustang. My dream car. The car I'd talked about since she was a kid. The one I never bought because I chose braces, tuition, and mortgage payments instead. Then came the envelopes. 2 thick, glossy tickets for a month-long cruise through Europe. Italy, Greece, Spain. The kind of trip her mother and I once planned to take before hospital bills swallowed our savings. Paid in full, with my money. 40 years of work. The double shifts, the torn knees, the savings I thought were safe. Gone. Spent on him. I stood there in my own living room, holding a 50-cent piece of cardboard that told me to disappear, while they laughed, clinking glasses of champagne I had unknowingly bought. The smell of cold pizza and cheap alcohol mixed in the air, sticky and sour. My fingers tightened until the card bent, but I didn't say a word. Through the blinds I could see it, the Mustang parked at the curb, its paint catching the streetlight like fire. My dream, handed to a man who looked at me as if I was already dead. She leaned into him, whispering something I wasn't meant to hear, and he laughed louder. It was a sound that stuck to my skin like grease, hard to wash off. They thought I'd just stand there, humiliated, the old man with nothing left but a broken card and a fading memory. They thought I was finished. But what they didn't know was that money cuts both ways. They believed they'd taken everything. They hadn't even seen the beginning. Before I tell you how I made them regret every stolen dollar, hit subscribe and write in the comments your name and your city. I want to know who's sitting across from me as I share this. I woke up that morning the way I always do, slow and stiff. The old injury in my knee reminding me that 65 isn't young, no matter how you dress it up. The house was quiet, too quiet sometimes. Just the hum of the fridge and the tick of the kitchen clock that ran a few seconds fast. A habit I'd never bothered to correct. I brewed coffee, the smell filling the air like it had for decades, and cracked 2 eggs into a pan. Bacon popped in the skillet, fat snapping against my wrist. It was the kind of breakfast her mother used to make on Sundays, back when we were all still under the same roof. I set the plate down and caught myself glancing at the empty chair across the table. The sunlight was coming in through the blinds, dust turning in the beams, and for a moment it felt like Helen would walk in, laughing at how much bacon I'd made, but the chair stayed empty. My phone buzzed on the counter, screen lighting up with a text from my daughter. "We'll stop by later. Don't make a big deal, just casual." I smiled at the words, even though I knew her tone. She hated when I tried too hard. But it was my birthday. A man doesn't get too many of those left. By noon I had swept the porch, trimmed the lemon tree, and set out a new pack of paper towels in the kitchen like she liked. I even bought her favorite cinnamon rolls from Safeway, warming them in the oven so the smell would hit her the second she walked in. When the knock came, it wasn't her hand on the door. It was his. Eddie, tall, hair gelled too neat, smile just wide enough to be practiced. "Afternoon, sir," he said, stepping in like the place already knew him. His shoes squeaked against the floor I'd mopped that morning. She followed behind, sunglasses still on though we were indoors. "Dad, you didn't have to—" "All this," she said, waving vaguely at the table, the rolls, the clean counters. Her voice was flat, like effort embarrassed her. "I wanted it to feel like a birthday," I answered. "Your mom always said a house should smell like something sweet on a day like this." Eddie chuckled, picking up one of the rolls without asking. "Guess you still listen to her rules, huh?" It was a small thing, a joke maybe, but it landed wrong. I watched him take a bite, icing sticking to his lip. He didn't wipe it, he didn't even thank me. My daughter looked away, pretending not to notice. The cinnamon, the sugar, all of it turned heavy in the air. That was the first time I felt it. The shift. Like a draft sneaking in through a door you thought was closed. They sat at the table like guests, not family. Eddie stretched out, his chair tilted back on 2 legs, balancing himself with the arrogance of someone who didn't buy the furniture. My daughter scrolled her phone, the light of the screen washing her face cold. I poured coffee into 3 mugs, sliding one toward her. She didn't touch it. "Still using that old Mr. Coffee?" she asked, finally looking up. Her tone was half amused, half judgment. "You know there are machines now that make cappuccino, lattes, everything. You should upgrade." I took a sip from my chipped green mug, the one with a crack near the handle. "This one still works. Doesn't need upgrading." Eddie smirked. Guess that explains the house too. Stuck in the past. I set my cup down harder than I meant to, the sound sharp against the table. For a moment, no one spoke. The smell of cinnamon rolls had turned cold, heavy. "Dad," my daughter said, her voice thinner now, "he just means you deserve better. You shouldn't live like this anymore, alone. Old things breaking down." She gestured vaguely at the kitchen, though nothing was broken. I glanced at the cabinets I'd painted last summer, the tile I'd replaced myself. Everything worked just fine, but the way she said it, like the house itself, was embarrassing, lodged in my chest. "You know what costs money?" I said evenly, replacing what still works. I'd rather keep what's mine than borrow for what I don't need. Eddie leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "But isn't that the point, sir? Money's not meant to just sit there. It should move, do something, buy experiences, upgrades, comfort." The word sat wrong. Comfort. Easy to say with my daughter's hand resting on his. Easy to say when you weren't the one who broke your back to keep a roof over it all. My daughter sighed. "Can we not do this right now? It's his birthday." She meant me, but the way she said it felt like an obligation, not a celebration. I looked at the rolls, untouched except for the one Eddie had bitten into. The icing had hardened, white lines across brown bread. The small things I'd prepared, the clean house, the food, the effort, all looked staged now, like props for a play no one wanted to attend. The silence stretched too long. Finally, Eddie pushed his plate back. "Maybe we should just order something better. Steakhouse? Italian?" My treat. But I knew whose card he'd use, not his. Heron. And where had that money come from? I didn't answer. I just stood, the chair legs scraping the floor. My daughter's eyes flicked to me for a moment, almost guilty, almost soft, then gone. The coffee had gone cold in my mug. I poured it into the sink, the dark liquid circling the drain with a faint gurgle. The smell lingered, bitter now. That was the second draft under the door, colder than the first. The following weekend she called, voice bright in a way that always made me cautious. "Dad, come meet us at the diner. Eddie's folks are in town. It'll be fun." I almost said no, but part of me still hoped, foolishly, that she wanted me there. So I ironed my shirt, the one Helen used to like, and drove out to Miller's Diner, the neon sign buzzing in the gray evening. The place smelled of grease and burnt coffee, the kind of smell that clings to your clothes. They were already in a booth near the window, laughing. Eddie waved me over with a grin too wide. "Dad, hey," my daughter said, scooting closer to him so I could sit. Eddie's parents were there too, Patricia with her polished nails, Gerald with his gold watch. They both looked at me like I was the odd one at the table. I ordered coffee. The waitress set it down in a chipped white mug, steam curling into the air. I wrapped my hands around it just to feel steady. Conversation swirled. Vacations, work, their new condo. Then Gerald leaned in. "So, Richard, your daughter tells us you're thinking of downsizing. Smart move at your age." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I looked at her. She avoided my eyes, pretending to study the menu. "I wasn't aware I was thinking that," I said slowly. Eddie chuckled. "Well, you said it's a lot to handle, right? Big place, just you. Makes sense to, I don't know, free up some cash. Enjoy life." Patricia smiled, sharp. "Exactly. Why let the space go to waste?" It felt like the air thickened. I sipped my coffee, bitter and too hot. "The house isn't waste," I said. "It's my home." Eddie's laugh came too quick, too loud. "Sure, but imagine what you could do with the money. Travel, cruises, new car." He winked at his father, as if the joke was private. Even the waitress paused, setting down plates, eyes flicking to me like she wasn't sure if she should apologize. My daughter finally looked at me. "They're just saying it would be easier. We worry about you." Her words were sugar, but the edge was clear. I set my mug down hard enough to rattle the spoon. "Don't worry, I'm managing just fine." The booth went quiet for a moment, the only sound the hiss of the fryer in the kitchen. Then Eddie smirked, raising his glass. "To managing just fine." His parents laughed softly, polite but sharp. I forced a smile, but inside my chest something cracked, small but real. They had turned me into a punchline over pie and coffee. When the check came, Eddie made a show of pulling out his card. "Don't worry, sir, we've got it." But I saw whose card it was, my daughter's, my money again. The neon outside flickered red against the window. I stared into my empty mug and thought, this is how it starts. The little cuts, the rehearsed jokes. Death by 1,000 smirks. I left a 5 on the table for the waitress. It was the only part of the evening that felt honest. A few days later, she stopped by the house. No call first, just the sound of tires crunching on the driveway. I opened the door to see her standing there with Eddie, his hand resting casually on her shoulder like he owned the place. "Dad," she said, brushing past me, "we need to talk about some things." The living room still smelled faintly of the wood polish I'd used that morning. Helen always said, "A clean house clears the mind," but nothing cleared what came next. Eddie dropped onto the couch, legs stretched out. "Sir, we've been thinking. You've got a lot of assets tied up in this house. And, well, at your age, it might be smarter to make arrangements." "Arrangements," I repeated, the words sour in my mouth. "Yeah," he said, grinning, "like making sure the right people are on the paperwork, just in case something happens." My daughter stood by the window, fiddling with the blinds. "It's not about now, Dad. It's about later. We want to make sure everything's simple for everyone." I looked at her, really looked. Her face was the same one I'd kissed goodnight when she was 6, the same face that used to light up over a dollar bill for the ice cream truck. But her eyes didn't meet mine. "You're talking about inheritance," I said flatly. She winced. Eddie didn't. "Exactly, no shame in that. Better to plan early. Avoid the lawyers taking their cut, right?" I felt my jaw tighten. "This house isn't a problem to solve. It's my home." Eddie smirked, glancing at her. "For now." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint buzz of the fridge in the kitchen. I could almost hear Helen's voice in my head. "Don't let them see you bleed until you know what you'll do with the blood." She finally turned toward me, voice softer. "Dad, we're just thinking ahead. You always told me to be responsible." Responsible. That word cut deeper than any accusation, because I had been responsible. Every bill, every scraped knee, every late-night ride home from school events, I carried it all, and now my reward was being written out of my own life. I stood slowly, leaning on the back of the old oak chair Helen used to sit in with her newspaper. "I'll think about it," I said. Not because I meant it, but because I wanted them gone. Eddie grinned, satisfied like he'd just closed a deal. She gave me a quick hug, perfunctory, already halfway out the door. When the car pulled away, I stayed by the window, watching the taillights fade into the street. The house felt too quiet, too hollow, like the air had been stolen out of it. On the coffee table lay a realtor's flyer Eddie had forgotten. A glossy picture of a modern condo, smiling young couples on the balcony. At the bottom, bold letters, "Start fresh." My hands shook as I crumpled it. The paper cracked loud in the silence. That was the third draft under the door, and this one carried ice. The next Sunday, I cooked a roast. It had been Helen's tradition: slow oven, rosemary from the garden, garlic rubbed deep into the meat. The house filled with the smell, rich and warm, and for a while, I almost convinced myself things were normal. I set the table with the old china, the plates with the blue rim, polished the silver I hadn't touched in months. When they arrived, it was without ceremony. Eddie walked straight in without knocking, his voice booming through the hall. "Smells good, sir. Guess you had too much time on your hands today." My daughter followed, tossing her purse onto the chair Helen always used. She didn't even notice. "Dad, we won't stay long," she said, already pulling her phone out. We sat. I carved the roast, laying slices onto their plates. Eddie was quick to smother his portion in the ketchup from the fridge. The sharp vinegar smell cut through hours of cooking. He chewed noisily, talking around the food. "Not bad. Different from what we usually get, huh?" He winked at her. She laughed, short and thin. I forced a smile. "Helen always said rosemary makes the meal." "Who?" Eddie asked, genuinely blank. "My wife," I said evenly. "Her mother." "Oh, right." He shrugged, reaching for another scoop of potatoes. My daughter didn't look up. The clatter of cutlery filled the silence. The roast that had once been family felt like scraps. I ate slowly, each bite turning heavy in my throat. Halfway through, she stood, brushing crumbs from her skirt. "We should get going. Eddie's friends are waiting. He promised them we'd stop by." I looked at the half-full plates, the untouched gravy boat, the pie cooling on the counter. I thought we'd have dessert. "Next time," she said lightly, slipping her arm through his. Eddie stretched, pushing back his chair so it scraped loud against the floor. "Don't wait up for us, sir." He tossed his napkin onto the plate like a flag of victory. They left in a rush of perfume and laughter, the front door swinging shut too hard. The house fell quiet again, the roast cooling into rubber, the pie untouched. I stood there for a long moment, fork still in my hand, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator. The meal I had made with memory and care had been dismissed in minutes. My own table had felt like someone else's. When I finally sat down again, the chair seemed harder, the room colder. For the first time, I realized the truth. In their world, I was already a guest in my own home, and not a welcome one. The day they picked up the Mustang, I walked into the dealership already knowing something was wrong. Too many lights, too much chrome, salespeople buzzing like flies around sugar. My daughter and Eddie were already at a glass desk with a man in a tight gray suit, papers stacked, keys ready. "Perfect timing," Eddie said. "You can sign for the title transfer." He slid a blank page toward me, just a signature line and nothing else. "What's this?" I asked. "Standard," he said. "The car has to be registered somehow. Just sign, Dad. Don't complicate it." The salesman gave me a quick glance, eager to keep the deal alive. My daughter leaned close, whispering like I was a child. "Please, Dad, don't start." I looked at the top sheet again. Blank. My pen hand twitched, but I set it down. "This isn't paperwork, it's bait." Eddie's smile cracked. "Sir, don't be dramatic. It's just efficiency. You want to hold us up over details?" The couple next to us, waiting for their SUV, shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to listen. The salesman coughed. "If we could just move this along—" "My card," I interrupted. "Why is my card listed for the down payment?" No one answered at first. Then Eddie leaned back, folding his arms. "We used it for the cruise too. We'll pay you back." I felt the air around us tilt, like everyone in the showroom had gone still. My daughter pressed her lips tight, cheeks flushed. "Dad, don't embarrass me. This is my life." "This is my money," I said, my voice flat. For a moment, nobody moved. The salesman shuffled papers, Eddie's jaw tightened, and my daughter turned her face away like she couldn't bear to look at me. They posed for a photo by the car anyway, Eddie dangling the keys, arm around her shoulders. She smiled for him, not me. I stood a few feet away, staring at the reflection in the glass. A man they thought was already gone. 2 days later, they showed up with a manila envelope. Eddie dropped it on my coffee table like he was delivering news instead of a scam. "Quick signature, sir. Work paperwork. HR form." On top lay a single page, blank except for a signature line and a notary box waiting like an open trap. My daughter paced the room, tapping her phone. "We're late for the notary at UPS. Please, Dad, just sign. It's routine." I picked it up by the corner. "Routine for what?" Eddie's grin never faltered. "Discount program, senior benefits, nothing heavy." The paper smelled of toner, too clean, too fresh. I set it back on the table. "I won't sign a blank." They herded me to the UPS store anyway, a strip mall box squeezed between a nail salon and a payday loan office. The air smelled of ink and stale air conditioning. The clerk wore a badge that read, "Notary" in block letters. "Form?" she asked. Eddie slid it forward. "Quick stamp, we're in a hurry." She scanned it, then looked at me. "This page is empty." Eddie chuckled, voice oily. "We fill it later. He just needs to sign." The clerk's expression didn't shift. She pushed it back with one finger. "That's not notarization." People in line glanced over. A mother pulled her toddler close. A man with a package leaned forward, curious. My daughter's voice sharpened. "Dad, don't make this harder. Just sign." I let them watch me uncap the pen. Eddie smiled, too fast. My daughter angled the paper like she was feeding me. The whole store leaned in on the moment. Then I set the pen down. "If this is real, it doesn't need to be blank." Eddie's jaw twitched. "Sir!" "No," I said, loud enough for the line to hear. "You don't need my help. You need my house." The silence was louder than shouting. The clerk folded her arms. "Next customer?" We walked out under the fluorescent hum, eyes burning my back. Eddie yanked the door open too hard, forcing me to pass. My daughter's face was tight, white around the mouth. "You'll regret this," Eddie muttered. I already knew I wouldn't. The showroom smelled of new tires and machine polish, a sharp scent that clung to the back of my throat. Bright lights reflected off chrome until everything gleamed too much, too clean. My daughter stood beside Eddie, her hand hooked through his arm as if they belonged in a magazine ad. On the desk between them lay a folder of contracts, and on top, my credit card receipt. "Congratulations," the salesman said, sliding over a pen. "Down payment processed, registration pending. Just need one more signature." I looked at the paper. My name, my account, my money. "There's a mistake," I said. My voice was calm, but I could feel the blood hammering in my ears. That card isn't yours to use. Eddie smiled like he was talking to a child. Don't worry, sir. We'll pay it back. Consider it family investment. I pushed the folder back. Cancel it. The salesman's eyes flicked nervously between us. My daughter touched my arm, her voice sharp with embarrassment. Dad, please, not here. Don't make a scene. I turned to her. You spent $30,000 of my savings without asking. That is a scene. Around us, people slowed. A couple waiting for their SUV shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to listen. A woman with a stroller paused near the glass doors. Eddie chuckled, though his jaw tightened. It's just a car. You barely drive anymore. Why not let someone enjoy it? My eyes moved past him to the Mustang on display, the deep red body glowing under the lights. My dream, stolen and paraded like a trophy. My daughter leaned close, whispering, but loud enough for the salesman to hear, You always do this. You hold things over me. Can't you just be happy for once? Happy? I said, the word burning in my throat. You took my money. You erased me from my own life. And you think I should clap? The salesman coughed, desperate to smooth it over. Sir, maybe we step into my manager's office? No, I said. I'm done stepping anywhere. I pushed the folder away and walked out. Behind me, Eddie's voice followed, loud, mocking. Guess we'll save you a spot at the nursing home parking lot. Laughter trailed after his words, sharp and brittle under the fluorescent hum. 2 days later, they showed up again, all urgency and smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Eddie carried a manila envelope, tapping it like a prize. Quick signature, sir. HR form. Just routine. I took the page from him. Blank. A single line for my name, and a notary box printed in the corner. No details, no terms, no reason. What's this supposed to be? I asked. He grinned. Corporate discount, senior program, nothing complicated. My daughter paced the living room, arms crossed. Dad, don't start. We're late for the notary. Just sign. I won't sign a blank, I said. Eddie's smile thinned. Sir, it's standard. We'll fill it later. You're holding us up. They herded me out anyway, down to the UPS store, wedged between a nail salon and a payday loan shop. The air inside smelled of ink and cheap toner, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A young clerk looked up from her counter, badge reading, Notary in bold. Form? She asked. Eddie slid it forward. Just needs a stamp. Quick job. She frowned. This is empty. He laughed too loudly. We fill it in later. He just signs now. Easier that way. The clerk pushed it back with one finger. That's not notarization. The line behind us went still. A man with a package stared openly. A woman pulled her child closer. The air tightened. Everyone watching. My daughter's voice sharpened. Dad, don't embarrass me again. Just sign. I uncapped the pen slowly, letting them believe. Eddie's shoulders relaxed, his mouth already shaping a thank you. My daughter angled the page toward me, the tip of her nail tapping the blank space like she was feeding me a spoonful. Then I set the pen down. If this were real, it wouldn't be empty. The silence cracked through the store. Eddie leaned in, voice low but shaking. You're making a fool of yourself. I looked straight at him. Number you did that for me. The clerk folded her arms. Next customer. The bell on the door jingled as someone left, shaking their head. Heat poured in from the street, mixing with the cold of the air conditioner. Eddie gathered the papers with stiff fingers, his grin gone. My daughter's face was pale, lips pressed tight. We stepped outside. Cars rushed by on the boulevard, horns blaring. Eddie yanked the door open so hard it slammed into the wall, then held it as if I was supposed to hurry through. I didn't. You'll sign eventually, he muttered. Everyone does. I slipped the pen into my pocket. Not this man. The sun was too bright, the air thick with exhaust and fried food from the taqueria down the block. I walked ahead, leaving their shadows behind me. For the first time, I realized they weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were trying to erase me. I didn't sleep. The house made its usual sounds, the refrigerator's hum, the heater clicking, the wall clock chewing seconds. But they felt louder, like the place was testing how much quiet I could swallow. I tried the couch, then the bed, then Helen's chair by the window, and ended up at the kitchen table with a cold mug. I called my daughter once, straight to voicemail. I texted, come by tomorrow, just us. 3 dots appeared, vanished, returned, finally. Not tonight, Dad. Emotions are high. No heart, no name. I typed, I love you, deleted it. I typed, return my card, deleted that too. The cursor blinked like a little siren. At 2 a.m., I walked the hallway, fingertip along the paint Helen chose because it looked like morning at night. A moth knocked against the porch light and fell. I pictured the Mustang under street lamps, Eddie revving it for the sound, both of them laughing about the UPS scene, rehearsing the next try. My stomach turned. By dawn, I made oatmeal and didn't eat it. The spoon slid, handle hanging like a flag at half-mast. Out by the curb with the trash bins, I stood longer than needed. Mrs. Alvarez came out in a robe to grab her paper. She saw me, hesitated, then pretended to fix her mailbox until I went inside. At 10, I drove to the bank. The lobby smelled like carpet cleaner and perfume. A young teller asked how she could help. I asked for a temporary hold on a card. When she pulled up the account, her smile faltered. "Some of these are pending," she said. "The merchant has to reverse. We can dispute after posting." Blue light from the screen washed her face. I nodded. Back home, I opened the freezer and found 2 chicken breasts, furred with ice crystals. I cooked one anyway. The smoke alarm panicked at the oil, and I waved a towel until it went quiet. Lunch tasted like nothing. The fork clinked against the plate, loud in an empty room. I tried an old friend. Voicemail. I left a short message that sounded like a stranger borrowing my voice. I turned on the TV for noise. Daytime shows argued about nothing. An ad for a cruise line rolled by. Couples on decks under a pink sky. I turned it off. In the afternoon, I walked to Walgreens for aspirin I didn't need. Fluorescents hummed. The waxed floor smelled like lemon. At the register, a teenager asked, "Senior discount?" I said yes, because the truth doesn't ask if you like it. In the sliding doors, my reflection wobbled. Evening slid in without edges. I stood in the backyard, porch light off, listening to the freeway. A siren far off. I checked my phone. Nothing. The moth from last night lay under the light, wings like ash. I swept it into my palm and let it go to the rosemary. Helen planted that bush after our worst winter. When the first stars came, I whispered her name because there was no one else to hear it. The sound didn't fix anything. It didn't even stay. I went inside and locked the door, as if trouble used the front steps. The next morning, I tried once more. I drove to their apartment off Harbor Street, the new kind with a rosemary hedge and a lobby that smells like eucalyptus. I pressed the buzzer, no answer. When the elevator opened, Eddie stepped out with grocery bags and a grin that didn't touch his eyes. "We're heading out," he said. My daughter stood behind him, sunglasses on, though we were indoors. "Text me later," she said. The concierge looked up long enough to add, "Residents only, sir." In the car, a notification lit my phone. The 2 of them beside the red Mustang, ocean in the background. Caption, "Starting fresh." I typed, "Return my card," stared, erased it, and put the phone face down. I drove to the church hall where Helen and I used to pour coffee. The room smelled of floor wax and burnt decaf. Pastor Ron hugged me and asked the practice question. I asked about the free legal clinic. "Next week," he said, "sign up in the office." I wrote my name carefully and left before kindness could do damage. At home, the mailbox held a glossy envelope from a cruise line, the kind of mail that finds you even when you don't want to be found. Photos spilled across my counter. Santorini at sunset, tables for 2. I dropped it into the trash where it landed on a realtor flyer someone slid under my door. Start fresh again. That afternoon, the HOA emailed, "Noise complaint regarding loud alarms from your unit." I replied, apologizing. 30 minutes later, another email reminded residents not to store items on porches. I brought in Helen's pale green watering can. It left a clean ring on the boards where it had stood for years. Near dusk, I called my daughter. She answered on the second ring and put me on speaker. Restaurant noise swelled. Plates, laughter. "We're at dinner," she said. Eddie's voice bled through. "Tell him we'll handle the paperwork later." She lowered her voice by a hair. "Please stop calling tonight." "Return my card," I said. A pause opened and closed. "Please," she said, and hung up. I walked to the strip mall for tacos. I ate in the car with the windows down, watching the sky turn purple over the freeway. When I finished, I folded the foil until it was a small square, as if order could be rebuilt from something that thin. Back home, the house smelled like cold tortillas and lemon cleaner. I stood in the doorway and let the silence press a hand against my chest. I thought about calling again, or driving back, or writing a letter the way men did when the words had to matter. Instead, I washed the plastic fork, dried it, and slid it into the drawer as if I might need exactly that one again. I had been told to wait in a lobby that wasn't mine, shushed on a phone that used to ring for me, and corrected by emails from a committee of strangers. If there was a bottom, this felt close. I sat at the table under the buzzing kitchen light. Somewhere, a text arrived, and I didn't look. The clock chewed another minute. The house waited. I waited with it. I wasn't looking for anything that night. The house was dim, only the yellow glow of the lamp in the corner. I'd left the TV on mute, news anchors moving their mouths like ghosts behind glass. The manila envelope Eddie had slammed on my table was still there, half open. For hours I avoided it, as if the paper might bite. Finally, near midnight, I pulled it closer. Most of it was trash, printed articles, realtor flyers, blank forms. But halfway down, I found something he hadn't meant for me to see. A folded printout of an email thread. Eddie's name at the top, my daughter's below, and in bold letters, property transfer, Whitman residence. My throat tightened as I read. Phrases leapt out. Accelerate process, quit claim draft, liquidate equity. They weren't planning. They were preparing. The paper smelled faintly of cologne, Eddie's kind, the one that always lingered too long after he left. I held it in my hand until my knuckles went white. I looked around my living room, at the worn couch Helen had chosen, the photos along the mantel. One of my daughter at 12, braces shining, holding a science fair ribbon. One of Helen and me on a pier in Monterey, the wind tangling her hair. And here, on Eddie's printout, those memories reduced to liquidate equity. I set the email down and grabbed a notebook from the drawer. My hands shook, but the pen moved steady. Dates, amounts, names. I wasn't writing feelings anymore. I was writing evidence. Later, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles. For the first time in weeks, my chest felt less heavy. Because now, it wasn't just anger. It was direction. They thought I was finished. They forgot one thing. Old men know how to wait and how to watch. The next morning I drove downtown, the kind of morning where the sun already burned through the haze, but the air still smelled faintly of wet asphalt. The courthouse lot was full, so I parked 2 blocks away near a strip of boarded-up shops. As I walked, I kept one hand on the manila folder under my arm, like it might blow away if I let go. The law office was on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. The elevator hummed and shook as it climbed. A plaque near the door read, Henderson and Bloom, attorneys at law. I had circled the name from a flyer Pastor Ron gave me after I'd asked about the free legal clinic. Inside, the reception smelled of stale coffee and copier toner. A woman at the desk handed me a clipboard. "You're here for probate consultation?" she asked, barely looking up. "Something like that," I said. 10 minutes later, I sat across from a man in his 40s, gray suit, tie too tight. He introduced himself as Michael Bloom, shook my hand firmly, then adjusted his glasses. "So, Mr. Whitman, tell me what's going on." I slid the email printout across the desk. He read silently, eyes narrowing. "Property transfer, quitclaim deed. These aren't things you sign lightly. Who gave you this?" "My daughter's fiancé," I said. The words tasted bitter. He tapped the page with his pen. "If you had signed a blank sheet, they could have attached anything here. Deed, power of attorney, even a loan assignment. Legally binding, if notarized." I leaned back, feeling the chair creak. "So I wasn't paranoid." "No," he said flatly. "You were nearly robbed." The fluorescent light buzzed above us. I shifted, gripping the folder tighter. "What can I do?" Bloom flipped to a legal pad. "First, protect what's yours. File a notice of interest with the county clerk. Freeze any possibility of transfer without your direct approval. Second, secure your accounts. If they've accessed one, they'll try for others. Third," he paused. "Do you want them prosecuted?" The question hung there, heavy. I pictured my daughter's face, the way she wouldn't meet my eyes at the diner, then Eddie's grin at the dealership. "Not yet," I said. Bloom studied me a moment, then nodded. "Then document everything, every text, every attempt, every piece of paper. If this goes to court, you'll need a trail." When I left, the lobby felt brighter, almost too bright. The city noise outside was sharper, the horns and footsteps less dull. I walked back to my car with the folder under my arm, thicker now with his notes. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like a man carrying matches into a room full of dry wood. That night, I didn't turn on the living room light. I sat in the dark with only the glow of my laptop, the hum of the old fan filling the silence. Bloom's words replayed in my head. document everything. I started with the bank. My online statement loaded slow, each line another reminder of how careless I'd been. Cruise deposit, dealership payment, charges at restaurants I'd never stepped into. Each swipe was a breadcrumb, and the trail spelled out their arrogance. I screenshotted everything, saving files to a flash drive I kept in my pocket. At 2 in the morning, I drove to a FedEx office that stayed open late. The clerk barely glanced at me as I printed copies and sealed them in an envelope. My hands shook, but not from fear, something colder, steadier. Every page was a weapon now. The first real risk came 2 days later. I had driven past their apartment more times than I wanted to admit, just to see the Mustang gleaming in the lot. That day, luck or fate put me in the hallway as Eddie stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, folder under his arm. I ducked into the stairwell before he saw me. His voice carried, sharp in the concrete echo. "Yes, title transfer. We'll have the old man's signature soon. He's getting weaker by the day." I gripped the railing so hard my knuckles whitened. When he passed, I slipped back into the hall. His door hadn't closed all the way. A crack of light bled into the corridor. I shouldn't have done it, but I pushed, just enough to see inside. Their dining table was covered with papers, contracts, forms, a laptop still open. The screen showed an email draft. Attached, "Please find the deed. Final version." My heart pounded. I pulled out my phone, snapped 2 photos quick, too quick. The shutter sound echoed like a gunshot. The door creaked. Eddie's footsteps returned. I bolted down the stairwell, each step booming, lungs burning. I didn't stop until I was in my car, sweat soaking the back of my shirt. In the mirror, I saw him step into the parking lot, scanning, phone still in hand. He didn't see me, not yet. I drove home with my headlights off until I hit the main road. The flash drive in my pocket pressed against my leg, warm, solid. I had almost been caught, but the photos on my phone were worth the risk. Later, sitting at the kitchen table, I looked at them again. Eddie's papers spread out, my name in bold across a draft I'd never seen. Almost caught meant I was close, too close for them not to notice soon. The next week, the tone of their visits changed. No more forced smiles, no more casual drop-ins. Eddie knocked once, then let himself in like the house was already his. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, leaning back in Helen's chair as if testing how it fit. "You've been quiet, sir," he said, twirling my pen between his fingers. Almost too quiet. My daughter hovered by the counter, scrolling her phone, but not really reading. She kept glancing at me, the way people glance at a dog that might bite. "I've had nothing to say," I answered. Eddie smiled thin, showing just enough teeth. "Funny, because a friend of mine at the UPS store said you made a scene. Blank paper, loud voice. Not like you." I kept my eyes steady on him. "Maybe your friend should mind his own business." The smile faded. He leaned forward, the chair creaking. "See, the thing is, business is what I do, and when things get messy, people get curious. You understand?" The air between us thickened. I could smell the faint tang of his cologne, sharp and synthetic. My daughter finally spoke. "Dad, we're just trying to help. If you'd stop fighting us, it wouldn't have to be so hard." I laughed once, dry. "Hard for who?" Her face tightened. She didn't answer. Later that night, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Stop snooping. We see you." No name, no context. Just that. I locked every door, every window. Sat in the dark with the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the clock. My journal lay open on the table. Under the last note I'd written, dates, amounts, emails, I added 4 words. "They're watching me now." The next day, Bloom called. "Mr. Whitman, someone tried to request a copy of your deed at the county clerk's office. Did you authorize that?" "No," I said, voice flat. He sighed. "Then they're pushing. Be careful." That night, as I took the trash out, I saw headlights idling at the corner, a car I didn't recognize, engine running. When I stepped closer, it pulled away slow, taillights glowing red like eyes in the dark. Inside, I sat by the window with the lights off, watching my street until dawn. Every shadow looked like theirs, every sound like a step too close. They were getting nervous. That made them dangerous. But it also meant they knew I was no longer the old man they could laugh off. I spent days pretending to feel weaker, slower, more confused. At breakfast, I let my spoon clatter against the bowl, muttering apologies. When I walked the hallway, I dragged my left foot just enough to echo like a limp. My daughter watched with a frown she thought I couldn't see. Eddie whispered to her in the kitchen, their voices carrying just far enough. "He won't last the year," he said. "We need to push the paperwork sooner." Her answer was a hiss, sharp. "Not here, he might hear." I sat in the living room chair, the same one Helen used to curl up in, eyes closed, head tilted like I dozed off. The air vent hummed above me, carrying every word to my ears. My heart pounded, but my breathing stayed slow. That night, I checked my phone. The photos I'd snapped of their drafts were still safe. I transferred them to the flash drive, then to a cloud account Bloom had helped me set up. Redundancy, he'd called it. If they take one, you've got 3 more. The small victory came the following afternoon. Eddie's impatience slipped. He left his laptop open on my dining table when he went to answer a call outside. The screen glowed with an email thread, subject line bold. Quit claim, filing draft, urgent. My daughter's name was CCD attached, a PDF with my property address in the header. I pulled out my phone, snapped 2 quick photos, and closed the lid just as his footsteps returned. "Everything okay?" he asked, eyes sharp. "Fine," I said, voice flat. He looked at me too long, like a man sniffing smoke but not seeing flames. Then he smiled, that hollow grin he wore when he wanted to prove control, and carried the laptop out. Later, I sent the photos to Bloom. His reply was short. "Solid evidence? Keep going. They're hanging themselves." For the first time in months, I felt a shift. Not big, not dramatic, but real. Proof in my pocket, copies in safe places, an ally who believed me. When I sat at the kitchen table that night, the clock ticking steady, the fridge humming, it didn't feel like silence pressing me down anymore. It felt like cover, a shield. They thought they were tightening the noose. What they didn't see was that I'd already started untying the knots. The pressure didn't stop. If anything, it grew sharper. My daughter called late one evening, her voice low, as if Eddie was listening from the next room. "Dad, people are starting to ask questions," she said, "about your health, about your ability to manage things. If you keep resisting, it's going to get messy." I heard the hesitation in her tone, the weight of someone else's words lodged in her throat. "Whose questions?" I asked. She paused. "Friends, Eddie's colleagues, people at the bank." I almost laughed. Friends. They were seeding the ground already, painting me as incompetent. The next morning, I drove to the county clerk's office. The hallway smelled of disinfectant and old paper, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. When I gave my name at the window, the clerk frowned at her screen. "You already filed a notice of transfer last week," she said. My stomach dropped. "No, I didn't." She tilted the monitor toward me. There it was. My name, my property address, a digital stamp, filed and pending. For a second, my chest locked tight. "Who submitted this?" The clerk shook her head. "Online filing, logged as yours." I forced my voice steady. "What happens if it's fraudulent?" "You'll need to dispute. With evidence?" My hand clenched the counter so hard my knuckles ached. Evidence. I had some. Maybe not enough. Back home, the Mustang was parked across the street, Eddie leaning against it with his phone. He waved when he saw me, a smile too wide. "Paperwork's faster than you think," he called out. I didn't answer. Inside, I locked the door and sat at the kitchen table, my journal open. Every instinct told me to crumble, to scream, to call the cops. But Bloom's voice echoed in my head. Document. Build your trail. So I copied the filing notice, printed the screen, stapled it to the photos of Eddie's drafts. My folder grew heavier, my hands steadied. That night, I almost slipped. I was watching from the porch when Eddie came by, bold as brass, asking if I needed groceries. His grin carried more teeth than kindness. "Let me take your card," he said, waving casually. "Save you the trouble. We'll get everything." For a moment, I wanted to hand it over, just to make the pressure stop. My fingers even reached for my wallet. Then I saw Helen's watering can by the step, green paint chipped, her initials scratched on the side. It pulled me back like a rope. I slid my hand away from my pocket. "I'll manage." His smile cracked. Just a hairline, but I saw it. He left without another word, tires squealing as he pulled away. I sat there long after, the watering can at my feet, the night air cool against my face, almost caught, almost broken, but not yet. Because for the first time, I saw the fear starting to flicker in his eyes. The courthouse steps in San Mateo were crowded that morning. Reporters with cameras, lawyers in suits, ordinary people shuffling papers and clutching folders. The air smelled of exhaust from buses and the burnt coffee someone was drinking out of a paper cup. I stood at the bottom for a moment, adjusting my grip on the folder under my arm. It felt heavier than it should have. Not just paper, but weeks of silence, humiliation, planning. Eddie and my daughter arrived together, dressed too sharp for a routine filing. He wore a gray suit that didn't quite fit his shoulders, sunglasses perched like armor. She had her hair pinned back, makeup flawless, but her eyes darted away when she saw me. "Dad," she said flatly, not stopping. Eddie grinned, voice just loud enough for the nearest reporter to hear. "Glad you could make it, sir. Might as well watch history. Transfer day." I didn't answer. I followed them inside, through metal detectors, past the echoing hallways with their smell of waxed floors and stale air. The clerk's office was packed. A line snaked to the counter, people murmuring, phones buzzing. Behind the glass, clerks stamped forms, one after another, the sound like hammers driving nails. Bloom met me near the benches, shaking my hand firmly. "You brought everything?" I tapped the folder. Every receipt, every fake draft, every photo. His eyes flicked to Eddie and my daughter, who were laughing too loudly near the counter. "Good. We'll let them go first." It didn't take long. Eddie marched to the glass, sliding a set of papers through the slot. "Quitclaim deed," he announced. "Whitman residence, transfer of title." The clerk scanned the first page, her brow furrowed. "This signature line is blank." "Not for long," Eddie said, turning and holding out a pen toward me. The room quieted, eyes shifting. Even people waiting for passports leaned closer. My daughter stepped forward, her voice syrup-sweet. "Dad, just sign, please, everyone's waiting." The pen hung between us, the weight of every eye pressing down. For a moment, I let the silence stretch, let them believe I was cornered. Then I opened my folder and pulled out the first photo, sliding it across the counter. It was Eddie's laptop screen, glowing with quitclaim filing draft. Urgent. My daughter's name, CC'd. The date stamped clear in the corner. The clerk looked from the photo to the paper Eddie had handed her. The hum of the room dipped, conversations thinning. Someone in the back whispered, "I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. That's your draft, not mine." Eddie's smile froze. My daughter's hand slipped from his arm, and for the first time, I felt the ground tilt beneath them, not me. The clerk held the photo in one hand and the unsigned form in the other. The fluorescent light glared off the glass, making her squint. Eddie leaned in fast, voice sliding into charm. "Photos don't mean anything," he said. "Could be a draft, could be a joke. He's confused. He's not been well." My daughter's voice followed, soft but trembling. "Dad, please, this is embarrassing. You don't need to do this here." The people waiting shifted closer, sensing drama. A man with a stack of DMV papers muttered, "Notary scam," under his breath. A woman in line pressed her phone higher, filming. Bloom stepped forward calmly. "Mr. Whitman has been more than clear. You've attempted to file fraudulent paperwork. This is evidence." Eddie barked a laugh, loud and forced. "Fraudulent? Come on. He doesn't even understand what he's holding. It's scraps. You think the county clerk's going to take this seriously?" But the clerk wasn't laughing. She tapped the unsigned line on the form he had brought. "Sir, without this, nothing is valid. Did you obtain his consent for this draft?" Eddie's sunglasses slid down his nose. He shoved them back up quickly, trying to cover the twitch in his eyes. "Of course. We discussed it. Family matter." I let the silence linger, then pulled another page from my folder. A printout of the fake online filing stamped with my name, proof it had been submitted without me. I slid it under the glass, the county's own logo glaring back at the clerk. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "That's criminal." My daughter stepped forward, her hand shaking. "That's not... We didn't..." Her words broke apart under their own weight. Eddie tried again, louder. "Anyone can forge a screenshot. He's making this up. Look at him. He's old, confused. He doesn't know what he's saying." I looked straight at him, my voice flat. "Then why are your initials on the file name?" For the first time, his mouth didn't move. The clerk leaned back, eyes narrowing, scanning the page again. Behind me, the shuffle of people grew louder. Whispers, phones buzzing, someone murmuring, "Channel 7 needs to see this." Eddie opened his mouth, closed it, then pointed at me with the pen still in his hand. "He's lying. He's bitter and paranoid. None of this holds up." Bloom's voice cut through, sharp as a gavel. "It's more than enough to open an investigation, and we're not done yet." The pen trembled slightly in Eddie's grip. For the first time, the cracks in his confidence showed, and everyone watching could see them. The room buzzed with whispers now, the kind of low tide of sound that swells when people sense something bigger than paperwork unfolding. The clerk glanced at the line, then back at Eddie. Her lips pressed tight. Eddie forced a grin. "You're all reacting to nothing. It's family business, not your concern." But the more he talked, the more people leaned in. Phones angled. A man muttered, "Sure looks like concern." I opened my folder again, slower this time, deliberate. The paper rasped loud enough to cut through the noise. I slid out the photos I had risked everything for. Eddie's dining table, covered in drafts, my property address glowing on his laptop screen, date and time stamped. I laid them flat against the glass. "Explain these." My daughter's face drained of color, her lips parted, then closed again. Eddie leaned in too quickly, snatching one photo up. "This proves nothing. Anyone could—" He stopped. His own email address was visible at the top of the screen in the photo. The crowd murmured louder. Bloom's voice was calm but firm. "That's an unauthorized attempt to prepare a transfer deed. Combined with the false online filing already on record, that's fraud. Wire fraud, potentially. A felony." The clerk's expression hardened. "Sir, I need you to step back." Eddie laughed, too loud, his voice cracking at the edge. "Fraud? Are you serious? This old man probably broke into my place, staged these." "Then file a police report," Bloom interrupted, his tone sharp as glass. "Swear under oath that these are fabricated. Go ahead." The color drained from Eddie's face. Someone in line whispered, "Oath means perjury." Another said, "Channel 7 will eat this alive." The crowd's energy shifted, no longer neutral, but leaning, waiting for the collapse. My daughter finally spoke, her voice thin and breaking. "Dad, we didn't mean for it to go this far." Her words hung in the air, confession wrapped in desperation. Eddie snapped his head toward her, hissed under his breath, "Shut up!" Too late. Everyone heard. The clerk scribbled something on a pad, her voice firm now. "We'll need to escalate this to the county investigator. Effective immediately, no documents with Mr. Whitman's property address will be accepted without his physical presence." A ripple of murmurs swept the room. Eddie tried to protest, but the tide had turned. His words sounded smaller now, thinner, drowned under the weight of the evidence in plain sight. I stayed quiet, letting the silence finish what the papers had started. For the first time, Eddie wasn't steering the scene. He was trapped in it. The clerk placed my photos carefully to the side, as if they were already part of an official record. Eddie hovered close, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. He still clutched the pen, though he hadn't noticed his hand was shaking. "Listen," he said, voice pitched high. "This is ridiculous. You can't just accept some snapshots as evidence. He's old. He's confused. He doesn't know what he's talking about." But the words had lost their sharpness. They rang hollow in the crowded office. I opened my folder one more time. The last page slid free, the one I had almost been too afraid to use. The bank statement, printouts. Each line a charge that wasn't mine. Cruise tickets, the dealership down payment, expensive restaurants. And at the top, my account number. I laid it flat on the counter, the numbers glaring under the fluorescent lights. "This is my money," I said. "Every cent I saved, every double shift, every sacrifice. And here's how they spent it." The clerk's eyes widened. Bloom stepped closer. "Documented theft, unauthorized charges tied to his account, combined with attempted deed transfer, this isn't family drama, it's criminal fraud." A gasp rippled through the line. Someone whispered, "That's prison time." My daughter swayed where she stood, her hand gripping the edge of the counter. "Dad, I didn't—" Eddie said it was temporary. He said— "Enough!" Eddie snapped, his voice cracking. He rounded on her, eyes wild. "You weren't supposed to say anything." The room erupted in murmurs, phones tilted higher, cameras recording everything. "Sir," the clerk said firmly, pointing at Eddie, "I need you to step away from this counter immediately." Eddie's charm finally shattered. "This is a setup!" he shouted. "You're all blind. He's manipulating you. He's the liar here." His hand slammed the counter, the sound echoing. But no one believed him now. Even the people waiting for their own paperwork stared at him, like a man already undone. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. "You stole my money, you forged my name, and you tried to bury me before I was gone." His face twisted, red blotches spreading across his cheeks. He looked around for support and found none. My daughter wouldn't even meet his eyes. For the first time, the man who had strutted through my home, who had spoken to me like I was nothing, looked small. His voice shook when he said, You don't know what you've done. But the truth was written on every page in front of us, and everyone could see it. The county clerk pressed a button under the counter. Somewhere in the back, a buzzer sounded, a quiet signal that things had escalated beyond ordinary paperwork. Eddie froze at the sound. Reporters who'd been lingering outside drifted in now, drawn by the murmurs and the raised voices. One woman from Channel 7 lifted her mic, her cameraman already filming. "Sir, can you confirm your name?" she called toward me. I didn't answer. Bloom stepped between us, voice calm but firm. "We'll be making a formal statement once investigators are present." Eddie wasn't calm. He jabbed a finger toward me. "He's lying. He's been planning this for weeks, making us look like criminals. He's delusional." The crowd pushed closer, phones raised. Someone whispered, "That's the guy with the Mustang!" And laughter rolled through the line like thunder. My daughter tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Dad, I didn't know it was this bad." The reporter seized on it immediately. "Miss, are you admitting involvement?" Her face crumpled. "No, She looked at me, her eyes wet, searching for something she wasn't going to find. Eddie hissed at her under his breath, "Keep your mouth shut." But the microphones caught it. The room buzzed louder, a tide of gasps and mutters. Bloom slid another sheet under the clerk's glass, a notarized affidavit he'd prepared, confirming the attempted fraud. "Everything here is documented. Dates, signatures, accounts. You'll want to lock down those documents immediately." The clerk nodded sharply, pulling the stack toward her. "This office will initiate a hold. Nothing moves on this property without further review." Eddie's face went crimson. "You can't just freeze it. That's my house." I turned then, my voice steady, loud enough to carry. "It was never yours." Phones lifted higher. Someone shouted, "Say that again!" Cameras zoomed. The room tipped fully now. The whispers weren't neutral anymore. They were sharp, condemning. "Scammer. Tried to rob his own father-in-law. Look at him sweat." Eddie tried one last move, slamming the papers back across the counter. "This is fake! None of this proves anything!" But his words drowned in the noise. Reporters firing questions, the clerk calling for a supervisor, the crowd murmuring fraud, thief, liar. My daughter's voice broke through once more, but softer now, trembling. "Dad, please." I didn't look at her. My eyes stayed on Eddie, and for the first time, he looked back at me not as prey, not as a joke, but as a man he couldn't beat. The supervisor arrived, a woman in a navy blazer with a badge clipped to her collar. She listened as the clerk explained, flipping through the stack of evidence. Each page she read seemed to drain more color from Eddie's face. "This is serious," she said finally. "We'll be forwarding all of this to the district attorney. Sir," she looked at Eddie, "if you've been attempting fraudulent transfers, you should stop talking now." The cameras caught every word. Reporters leaned forward, microphones out. Eddie's composure snapped. "This is garbage," he shouted. "He's senile. He can't manage his own affairs. We were protecting him." The room erupted in noise, laughter, gasps, shouts. One man yelled, "Protecting him into bankruptcy?" Another, "Yeah, with his car and cruise money." My daughter's hands shook as she covered her face. "I never wanted this," she whispered, but it was too soft, too late. Eddie turned to her, eyes wide, desperate now. "Say something. Tell them it was your idea, too." The crowd gasped. She flinched like he'd struck her. "Don't drag me down with you," she said, barely audible, but the microphones caught it anyway. That was the end. He spun back toward me, veins standing out on his neck, voice cracking. "You think you've won, old man? You've ruined her life, and yours too. You'll die alone in that empty house." I stepped forward, steady, folder still under my arm. The noise dimmed for a second, the way crowds always fall quiet before the blow lands. "You tried to bury me with papers," I said, my voice carrying. "But papers don't lie, and today they buried you." The line of people waiting broke into murmurs, nods, even a few claps. Phones captured the moment. Eddie's mouth worked, but no words came. Security stepped in then, guiding him away as he shouted, voice hoarse and desperate. My daughter didn't follow. She stayed rooted by the counter, eyes fixed on the floor. Bloom touched my arm lightly. "That was it," he said. "That was the last nail." I nodded once, but I wasn't smiling. The air smelled of copier toner and sweat, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. For all the noise and victory, all I felt was the weight of silence waiting for me back home. Still, for the first time in months, it was a silence I had earned. The news spread faster than I imagined. Channel 7 ran the footage that same night. Eddie shouting in the clerk's office. My daughter's voice caught admitting she never wanted this. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years left messages on my machine, some with sympathy, some with shock. The Mustang disappeared from the curb within 24 hours. Bloom called to confirm. The county had frozen every attempt to move the property. Fraud investigation open, Eddie's name attached. My daughter hadn't been charged yet, but she was under review. They'll squeeze her, he said. She'll have to choose between loyalty and survival. I thought that would bring relief, but the house felt heavier than ever. Each room carried the echo of what had just happened, her voice shaking, his shouting, the crowd pressing in. Helen's chair by the window sat empty, sunlight slanting across it, dust glowing like a veil. I tried to sit there that night, journal open, pen ready. Instead, I found myself staring at the watering can on the porch, the initials she'd carved, HW. I hadn't touched it since the last confrontation. The next morning, I walked to the kitchen for coffee. The blinds rattled in a faint breeze, and there, on the table where Eddie once laid his fake papers, was an envelope. Plain, white, my name written in her handwriting. I froze. I hadn't heard the door. I hadn't seen her. The house was locked. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, no apology, no explanation. Just a single sheet, a quitclaim deed already filled out, my daughter's signature at the bottom. The transferee line wasn't Eddie. It was Bloom. I sat at the table, the paper trembling in my hands. The ink was fresh, her signature real. My daughter's neat script, the same hand that once wrote birthday cards in crayon, now binding me to something I hadn't agreed to. Bloom's name in bold black letters at the bottom. The transferee, the new owner. I called his office immediately, straight to voicemail. The message was polished, professional. Michael Bloom, Henderson and Bloom. Please leave a detailed message. I didn't. I hung up. The house was too quiet. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked, and outside a car slowed in front of the driveway before rolling on. I set the deed down, staring at it as if the letters might shift into sense. Had I been a fool twice? First Eddie, now Bloom? My phone buzzed. A text. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. Everything has a price, even justice. MB. My mouth went dry. I looked at the envelope again, flipping it over. No postage, no seal. She hadn't mailed it. She'd left it here, inside my house, which meant she still had a key. The back door creaked, just slightly but enough. My chest clenched. I rose, the deed still in my hand, and stepped into the hallway. Dad? Her voice, soft, uncertain. But I didn't answer, because I didn't know anymore whether it was my daughter standing there, or someone sent to finish what she had started. The clock ticked once more. The house held its breath. And then everything went dark.